Good morning. This is Jayita Chowdhury from Rivers Edge Wealth Partners, and I do have here with me Jan Cato from TLC Mediation. And Jan is a mediator, divorce mediator, and I have her here. Get a lot of questions about mediation, so I have Jan here with me to enlighten us about mediation and why we should choose divorce mediation. Thank you, Jan.
Hi, Jaida. Thank you so much for having me this morning. I'm happy to answer questions and help people understand more about mediation.
So my first question is, what had you interested in divorce mediation?
I'm sorry, what made me interested in divorce mediation?
Yes.
So I went through my own divorce more than 20 years ago, and I went through litigation because people didn't really understand what the options were at that time. And litigation is when you each have a lawyer and the lawyers kind of battle it out in court. Litigation is by far the most expensive and the longest way to get through the divorce process. And honestly, I feel like it's the most toxic. And I do believe that the process itself did cause some harm, some further harm to my relationship with my ex-spouse, and that's problematic when you're still co-parenting children together, right? Because you want to have your relationship with each other be as good as possible when you're raising children together. So I got divorced and I became a financial planner and insurance agent and was working largely with people going through divorce. And I became a CDFA like you, and we'll talk more about that later. But as I got more and more specialized in financial planning in the divorce arena and helping people going through the divorce process, more and more people started coming to me and asking me for help with trying to get their agreement together. So I was kind of like, wow, I think I'm mediating here. Maybe I should get trained. So I went on to get trained in mediation and really felt like in the training felt like, wow, this is my calling. I have a background as a therapist, all the financial planning, this CDFA work really has led to this. And I am extremely passionate about helping couples to get through the divorce process a better way for their pocketbook, a better way for their families, just to get through it smoother and more privately than the court process. So I strongly believe that everybody who has decided to get divorced should try mediation first. If they can't get success in mediation, they always have these other routes to try after that. But if they can get success in mediation, it's just going to be so much better for the entire family.
Yeah, so I completely agree with you. Mediation should be the first step for every divorcing couples. In our business, at Rivers Edge Wealth Partners, we are a full service wealth management firm. We do come across clients and prospects. And just like you, I am a certified divorce financial analyst. So I have been sought out by prospects to go over their assets to help them analyze what will be their short-term and long-term effects of dividing their properties. Like, as you know, we also do financial planning. So anytime a divorce or a life transition, or anytime there's any kind of life transitions, everything, their plan falls apart. They have to start from scratch.
Yes.
You and we know that.
Yeah, I find that every single couple who comes through the divorce process, the mediation process, whether they have multi-millions or coming to the table with nothing but debt, everybody has anxiety about how are we going to make the same income work to support two households. I mean, sometimes people decide to get divorced and they are already knowledgeable that they're having a difficult time making ends meet with income they have living in one household. So everybody has anxiety about that. And I encourage all of them in the very first meeting that we have to get several different people on the team with them. One of them is a CDFA like you, Jaita, and I do send a lot of people to you because they need to understand the finances of the situation. Divorce is financial, emotional, and legal. So I suggest to them in the first mediation, having a team of people to assist you as you go through this process would be most beneficial. So a
Exactly.
CDFA financial planner, a divorce coach or therapist, and some sort of hopefully mediation collaboratively trained attorney, so that as you go through the process, you have these team members to lean on and get advice from. Because mediation is it's a neutral, I'm a neutral. I'm not there to give legal advice. I'm not there to say whether or not their agreement is fair. My job is to facilitate the conversation and get them to agreement.
Yes.
So they may need some of these other specialists to help them. And I'm sure that that's the role you've played as a
Exactly.
CDFA.
So I'm sure you know this also. Like I do like to see my clients before they even go through a divorce process, like pre-divorce, helping them with their case information statement, helping them gather all their financial statements, helping them go through each one of them and create a balance sheet is the most important part. I feel like is before even they go to you. And that's how I like to send my clients over for mediation. That's my first go-to place, or to an attorney if they don't have the relationship between the couples to even go to a mediation. So I do like to do that. But again, during the settlement process also, what I like to do is, like, say if they are not being able to agree what they want, like if they want, how tax efficiently are they dividing their assets? Is it going to make sense? Like, is there a pension and a retirement that we need to look at and figure out what makes sense for each one of them? Create a plan every time there is a difference in opinion to show them that's going to work or not. That's during the settlement process. That is where I feel you and we work very well together. And then post divorce, once they have come to an agreement, and now is the time to divide their assets. Most of the time, I have been getting a lot of prospects or clients now who are coming to me after the divorce, having me help them divide the assets after the divorce based on their marital, their MSA or the marital separation agreement. So that's what I have been seeing. I don't know what you are seeing, but let me ask you one more thing. Like, do you need lawyers to be involved in this process if you are mediating?
Well, actually, in New Jersey, you are allowed to file for your own divorce and do your own divorce. You can go to the county website of where you live, the family court website, and you can print out the documents that are needed to file for your own divorce and create your own divorce. In reality, when people have done that, they end up in my mediation office a few years later because they realize that they have missed a few things. And, when you try to do your own divorce and you're not a lawyer, or a divorce professional, it's, probable that you're going to miss a few things or have to redo it in the future. And honestly, most people, once they get divorced, they don't want to be in this conversation over and
Yes.
over and over again
Yes.
with their ex-spouse. So look, I think it's always advisable to consult with an attorney prior to starting the divorce process. I do encourage people as they go through the mediation process to consult with an attorney because again, I'm neutral, right? I can't give them advice. But
No.
if they're sitting in the mediation and they're thinking, I'm not sure if what my spouse is proposing in terms of how we share the equity in the house or how much alimony is going to be paid for how long. I'm not sure if what they are proposing is fair to me or not. If they sit down with their attorney or their financial planner and look at the numbers and look at the projection of how that cash flow is for them, or the attorney can, speak to case law in the situations similar to theirs and give them some advice about, yes, accept the proposal or go back with this counter proposal. It gives the clients in the mediation process more confidence because in the end, they really have to come to an agreement that they both feel is fair to both of them. And the only way they're going to feel that way is if they have enough information and education to say, you know what, we're being fair. This is not ideal. We're certainly not looking at the same retirement picture that we would have if we had stayed married, but we've been fair. That's the best it gets. There's no winners in divorce.
No, they're not. And then we know that 1 in 2 marriages end up in a divorce as of latest statistics. So, yes,
Yes,
unfortunately.
Yeah, just want to complete the one part of the question too. You asked about the
Yes.
lawyer. So when mediation is complete, I write what's called a memorandum of understanding. So it's a
Okay.
document, it's really a handshake document. They don't sign it. It details in, regular people language, everything that they've agreed to. So you could read it and fully understand everything it says. The legal language and all that is not there. Then I do send them on to attorney review. It is not
Mm-hmm.
required. Sometimes one person will go to attorney review, sometimes nobody does. I do have an attorney's office that will help mediated couples to process their divorce in the event that nobody is going to go to an attorney review.
Mm-hmm.
I do recommend that people use at least one attorney's office. It's a legal process, right? So once they got through the hard part, which is the coming up with the agreement,
Mm-hmm.
the second part of this is processing of paperwork. In the post-COVID world, I have not even heard of anybody going before the judge in person or virtually. Paperwork is submitted to the courthouse. This is considered an uncontested divorce. The
Mm-hmm.
paperwork is processed and the couple is notified that they've been divorced. So that part of it, the legal processing of the divorce, I think it's absolutely in their best interest to use a lawyer's office to help them with that.
So both of them can use the same lawyer, or they need to get different lawyers?
Technically, lawyers are not allowed to represent two
Oh,
people.
okay. Okay.
But they can create a process where one person is technically filing, the other person can waive their right to the
Mm-hmm.
counterfile.
Mm-hmm.
There's workarounds, but
Okay.
yes, I mean,
Okay.
technically, lawyers really only represent one person.
So my next question for you is, say somebody starts is doing their mediation with you. What's the process? Both of them have to reach out to you at the same time and discuss it. And then how long does it take and how expensive is it?
Very common questions, Jaita. Almost every phone call.
I'm
Um,
sure.
I do offer people free time on the phone. Um, I feel like it's very scary for people when they're first starting. Many people say, look, I've never been through this before. I have no idea how this works or what to expect. I don't know if mediation is the right thing for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm happy to answer the questions on the phone because I would prefer that people have the real information versus what they're going to hear from their neighbor or their
Mm-hmm.
hairdresser or the
Mm-hmm.
person that delivers their mail, right? There's a lot of conversation out in the world about divorce, and I don't know that all of it is always the actual true information. So I'm happy to
Mm-hmm.
give that to people. Um, how long it's going to take has a lot to do with the couple themselves because it comes down to how fast or how long does it take them to get to agreement. I would
Mm-hmm.
say that most of the people that come to me, especially if they have children, we're looking at 3 to 4 meetings to get to agreement. Now, there are people that come to my office and they have already figured out the vast majority of what they have to agree to. There might
Mm-hmm.
be a few pieces they hadn't thought of or some detail that needs to be a part of what they have agreed to. But sometimes I've done mediations in one meeting if I have a case like that.
Mm, okay.
Um, but more often, if it's with children, I would say 3 to 4. If there aren't any children, it'd be a little less time, maybe 2 to 3. But again, if you have high conflict couples, and I think
Yes.
sometimes there is a myth that high conflict couples wouldn't have success in mediation. That's not true. But high conflict couples absolutely can succeed in mediation, but it might take them more time
Mm-hmm.
because especially if the only time they can really speak to each other constructively is in mediation, they may need more time. Whereas some couples are able to, sit at a table at Starbucks and kind of figure out their parenting time plan or look at their marital balance sheet and start to talk about how they're going to divide assets and debts. So, it really depends on the couple how long it takes. But once the mediation is complete and they have their memorandum of understanding, the paperwork is processed, which normally just takes a few weeks with the lawyer's office. And then depending on what county you're in New Jersey, from the time you submit the paperwork until you are divorced
Mm-hmm.
changes greatly. So
Mm-hmm.
from county to county, it could be a few weeks to a few months. Every county is different and it's always changing.
Oh, perfect. Thank you for answering that. I mean, most of the people that they come to me have no idea how mediation works. So thank you for answering that. How expensive? So it depends on hours, like how many hours they're spending with you, right?
Yes. So I charge an upfront fee. I charge an hourly fee. So there's
Okay,
no upfront retainer, which people are, used to with
exactly.
litigation.
Mm-hmm.
So the good news about that is that if you come to one mediation and you decide that you don't like me or you don't think mediation is right for you, you've wasted an hour of your time and an hour of fee, and you can go on and do whatever else. It's pretty low risk, right?
Perfect.
So, and sometimes people will say to me, for budgetary reasons, we need to meet only once a month because we
Mm-hmm.
only want to pay the hourly fee once a month. And that's fine. They can, the process, how fast or slow they go has everything to do with you. But in general, a litigated divorce in New Jersey, the average cost is about 50,000. And I would say
Yes.
that the average cost that people spend in mediation is around 2,000. So drastic difference.
Oh wow, that's a huge difference. I mean, I have seen divorcing couples where they end up having to file for bankruptcy, unfortunately, some of
Yeah.
them. So
Yeah. And listen, no matter what
yes,
their financial situation is, I know that you and I both want them to have as much money in their pockets as possible at the end of
exactly,
this because it's scary for them financially. So the less money that has to be spent on divorce professionals means the more money in both of their pockets.
exactly. I mean, they are again, I'll go back to the beginning of this call, is they are actually starting from scratch again, redoing their plans, redoing everything. What they had planned now is not valid anymore. So yes, you're
Yeah.
right. So my last question for you is there any time when mediation do not work?
Yes. So sometimes people approach me for mediation when there is active domestic violence going
Mm-hmm.
on or a
Mm-hmm.
restraining order in place.
Mm-hmm.
And that is not the type of case that should be done in mediation. And the reason is that everybody needs to feel safe in mediation, and everybody needs to be able to feel confident to stand up for themselves and say what they think is fair or make a proposal. So if somebody is frightened that if they say something that perhaps their spouse won't like, that they are going to suffer emotional or physical consequences as a result, that is not going to be a good mediation, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
not,
Mm-hmm.
it's, you can't have people coming to mediation and putting themselves in harm's way. So unfortunately, those cases are probably better handled by lawyers because each lawyer would be speaking on behalf of the client, and kind of protecting them in a way.
Exactly.
So this has come up in New Jersey because sometimes people in domestic violence situations don't feel like it's fair that they have to spend so much more money on attorneys when they're trying to get divorced because mediation is really not the ideal option. So New Jersey has some experimental programs throughout the state where some mediators are specially trained in domestic violence mediation. It is held at the courthouse, and the client is in one room, the other client is in another room. They are separated by security, and the mediator goes back and forth between the two rooms and tries to help them get to an agreement. So that's not in all counties, but that is something that has been experimented with in New Jersey to try to provide people who are in domestic violence situations some solutions. The other ones that, and this isn't very often, but the other
Mm-hmm.
ones that I've seen not succeed is usually related to somebody having extreme emotions
Mm-hmm.
around what's happening, right? There's a lot of things that lead people to the table to get divorced, right? There's affairs, there's cheating, there's
Yes.
lying, there's all sorts of things. And people have a lot of feelings, betrayal,
Mm-hmm.
hurt,
Mm-hmm.
anger,
Mm-hmm.
sadness, right? So that's one of the reasons why, in addition to someone like you who is a CDFA, having a divorce coach or a therapist of some kind involved with them individually, involved with them as a family, can really help because if you have a place to talk about and resolve some of this emotion that you have
Mm-hmm.
related to your divorce, you're going to be more likely to be more analytical and more focused on the task at hand, which is getting to agreement in mediation. So I have done mediations, and especially the ones on Zoom, this is nearly impossible, where both parties are just screaming the entire time, and nobody, you can't really figure out what people are saying when that's happening in a room. But when you're both in a Zoom room, there's nobody can hear anything. So
Yeah,
obviously that's not going to be very constructive. So there are times that they
it does
don't,
not.
yeah.
It does not work. Mediation does not work. No, so I mean, Jan and I, we have worked together on a few cases, and I know she does an amazing job when she is doing her mediation. And anything else, Jan, that you would like to talk
Yes,
about? Or
just question for you if you feel comfortable talking about it.
sure.
Most of the people that, they come to mediation, and when I recommend perhaps bringing in other professionals to help with things like
Mm-hmm,
business valuation, CDFA,
mm-hmm,
divorce coach, of course, there's a lot of concern about additional cost for all
mm-hmm.
of that. So can you speak a little bit about how you charge for your CDFA work?
So our charges are based on the kind of work we are doing. Depends on, it's kind of every client is different for us. We do not have like a charge, like a where we have a list of charges that we're going to charge. Every client is very special. Every client is very different. So based on the client or based on the prospect, we charge or we may not charge, depending. Every client is different. So it's very difficult for me to give you a number. But again, like we have clients that we are working with, we are not charging, or we have clients or prospects where we are charging. So every client is very different or unique depending on what we are doing.
So
So
would somebody be able to come to you for a free consultation, and you would be able to give them an idea of what it would perhaps cost, whatever it is they're looking for?
So just like you, every client or prospect who needs us is the first one or the first meeting is always free. We do not charge anything.
Okay.
It is a meeting where the client needs to feel that we are a good fit for them, because that's important. And then once we have analyzed their situation, and once they have spoken to us and they feel like they can work with us, we can then come up with a fee, or there might not be any fee, depending on every client. Again, it's very, very unique. And sometimes clients feel like they have a complex situation, and actually they do not. And you have noticed that also,
Yes. I
right?
find that sometimes, in the mediation is the first time, perhaps in their entire marriage, where they have seen a complete balance sheet with all
Exactly.
assets and debts. Sometimes it's comforting, and sometimes it's scary for them, right, to see
Exactly.
everything. But it is very helpful to have that in front of us as we proceed through the process, because people don't have to. I mean, New Jersey is an equitable distribution state, right? Which basically
Mhm.
means that anything that has been accrued during the marriage in terms of assets and debts is dividable unless it's been inherited or,
Mhm.
premarital, or there's some exceptions. Um, and so sometimes people have ideas in their head about how perhaps they will be able to
Mhm.
divide those up or trade those. And it's very helpful to have the balance sheet in front of us, because we can move it, we can move the money from column to column so that they can actually start to see if it works or not.
Exactly.
And I find that, just like the sort of work that you do, the numbers don't lie.
No,
So,
no,
right, a common question is, we'd love for our children to stay in the marital home, that
of
it's
course.
where they go to school, but we have no idea if the person who would be potentially staying is going to be able to afford it with or
You
without
know,
support.
you brought up a point that is something we always talk about, is let's look at, like, always one of them will always say that, can we stay in the same house? Do we need to sell the house? That is something always comes up in every meeting, and I'm sure you get that also. So yes, I mean, it is unfortunately, divorce is not something anyone wants in their life, but we do see that. And you and I, we see enough cases out there, enough situations out there that you mediate, and I help them figure out if it's going to work or not. So Jan, thank you once again for joining us today, and we're going to work with you more in the future.
Okay, great. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.